Hokage Starting from the Instant Full Level, Chapter 561 to 580. Chapter 561, Life-Threatening. Through the megaphone bug, the expressions of the various forces on this sea changed slightly. Walder, a remnant of an old age, was almost 80 years old. Now that it is in the mouth of a giant, it has become a little devil, which is too shocking to the world. However, in the eyes of the older generation such as Crane and Carp, this scene has become unusual. The dusty brain strings seemed to be plucked, and when he hurriedly looked up at Dongli and Brokey, his complexion changed dramatically. They are the two captains of the long-lost giant pirates who were rewarded over 100 million 100 years ago, Tori, the blue ghost, and Brokey the red ghost. The Crane cried out in surprise. That were still confused at first suddenly changed. 100 years ago, a reward of over 100 million was offered, and that was an absolute powerhouse. Perhaps, for other races, 100 years has already turned them into a cup of Lois. But for giants, it was the prime of life. In particular, the two giants in front of them are still the legend of Elbaf in the past. Qingzi, Akainu, Kizaru, they stopped them desperately. The Crane drank violently. Cap, Duent stare at Whitebeard, support them for me. One order after another quickly fell. Facing Long Yu with a trick, it subverted their cognition. However, before they could make a move, Dongli and Brokey looked at each other. Step forward with great strides. Bang! With heavy steps, the two of them stood directly on the bow deck, like two unattainable iron towers. Muscles all over his body tightened like a rock. The jet-black armament color is domineering, spreading out quickly, as if desperate, frantically pouring into the weapons of the two. The cherry blossoms are like a tide, exuding a smell like the vast ocean. An indescribable aura pervaded with Dongli and Brokey at the center. These two giants, actually know the high-level armament and domineering. What is their posture? Feeling this terrifying aura, the first person could not hold back. Especially Garp, his expression changed slightly, and he growled, Qingzi, hurry up and dodge, this is the giant's trick. The violent scene made an image flash across Whitebeard's mind. If he remembered correctly, Charlotte Lingling, who walked out of Elbaf in Luosheng that day, also used this trick. Pity that just after these words fell, people suddenly moved. With the lumbar disc as the fulcrum, the moment when all the strength of the body is poured into the hands. 10 fingers clench the weapon tightly. The next moment, it came out with a bang. Unparalleled Sakura domination of the country. Bang! A thunderous blast of air resounded. In front of Dongli and Brokey seemed to be directly penetrated. The violent air waves, like a hurricane rolling back, a purple-black wave, like a wild dragon tearing out of the void. Wherever he passed, the frozen sea along the way was instantly shattered. Of thousands of meters was shortened in the blink of an eye. Feeling this tyrannical aura of destruction, Qingzi's face changed drastically, and before he had time to think about it, he quickly pushed the fruit's ability to the extreme. Ice Age. Bang! The endless frozen waves turned into raging waves, slamming into the oncoming Liang hegemony. Under the collision with the slightest reluctance, the entire sea surface was instantly detonated. Boom! A thunderous explosion resounded. Facing the full blow of the two giants, Qingzi's all-out attack was instantly penetrated. Feeling the aura of destruction that made the spine chill, Qingzi didn't have time to think about it, and quickly cast elementalization to disappear in place ahead of time. Soon as the figure dissipated, the ice-covered earth that was standing under his feet was instantly affected and shattered. Everyone reacted. Yu Wei, who dominated the country, rushed into the distance. It can be described as a home run. Wald, if you don't do it now, when will you wait? After Dongli took a deep breath, he got up in a hurry. The face of the two giants who showed great power, Walder woke up in a trance. He didn't have time to think about it, and frantically activated the devil fruit ability in his body. Walolo, that kid is really extraordinary. Since he's fighting for his life, the old man also plays with him. Momo fruit 100 times. Roar! The dormant fruit ability in Wald's body was instantly detonated. Of scarlet blood on the corner of his mouth. However, this time, it is only for the simple acceleration of the ship, not to participate in the battle. For the relieved Walder, the short time is not a problem. The Glaciaki, which had been moving forward, was instantly increased by hundreds of times thanks to the power of Momo's fruit. Its volume is like a small island. The driving force required is also very high. But under the action of Momo fruit, everything came naturally. Waiting for Qingzi's body, in the aftermath of the shock, 2 or 3 kilometers away, condensed. Chapter 562, The Long-Lost Full Force. The Glaciaki, which Wald was frantically driving, had already dashed out of his blocking line. You bastard, stay with me. Akainu roared angrily. Facing the 2 legendary giants who suddenly fell from the sky, for them, it is simply a feeling of being caught off guard. If you hadn't seen it with your own eyes, who would believe that the skeleton demon not only recruited his predecessor, Shichibukai Crocodile, but also the legendary pirate 100 years ago? Seeing the Glaciaki accelerate suddenly, Akainu roared, covered in molten lava, and ran after him. However, just as he took a few steps, he made an awe-inspiring sound of breaking through the air. A huge skeleton hand, mixed with a rolling gesture, appeared directly in front of Akainu. The violent Akainu suddenly woke up in the absence of thought, and before he had time to think about it, he flipped the molten slurry in his hands and collided head-on with the attacking bone fist. Bang! The dull thunderous crash sounded again. Under the rewinding air waves, Akainu's body once again collapsed between the sky and the earth like molten lava. After a few hundred meters away the body was reunited and returned. The huge Susanoo of more than 10 meters blocking the way like an iron tower, Akainu's face was extremely gloomy, and he snarled, Kazuna, you go after him. Right now, among the 3 naval admirals, the fastest one is Kizaru. To rush out in the hands of Long Yu and stop the Glaciaki, among the 3 generals, Kizaru has a higher success rate. However, just as the idea came into being, the next voice that fell in their ears shook their nerves. Hee, Akainu, are you underestimating me or underestimating yourself, and you are planning to stop me just by one person? This is a fool's dream. Long Yu gave a dry laugh, looked back at him, and Gulojiki, who was gradually moving away, said, The long-lost full force, do you want to dance? The inexplicable speech, at this moment, seems to be filled with magical sounds. Facing Kasaragi and Akainu's expressions, Long Yu's movements did not stop at all, and his hands suddenly clasped together in front of everyone's eyes. Bang! A pair of 9-hooked jade eternal kaleidoscopes are written, and they spin like crazy. Under the blood-colored tide, the dust-covered pupil's strength seemed to be desperate, it was extreme. The next moment, the Susanoo, which was originally only a dozen meters away, soared rapidly. 6 arms, it looks like an Asura, and its huge body of dozens of meters gives people a feeling of being as stable as Mount High. The fierce breath that rolls out is even more like a taste that shakes the nerves. Seeing such a crazy scene in front of them, the pupils of those present suddenly shrank, and their eyes. The eye socket was almost split. Long time, in their eyes, the shape change of the great skeleton demon has been Long Yu's strongest trump card. I didn't think about it at all, it was all just wishful thinking. Least, facing Susanoo in his ultimate form, his old cognition was completely overturned. Even Whitebeard, one of the 4 emperors, had an inexplicable dignified expression on his face. It turns out that we underestimated him. Riley couldn't help but speak. Long time, in Rayleigh's eyes, Long Yu can only be regarded as a junior in a new era who likes to toss. I never thought that the means displayed at this moment, even these old legends of them, were moved by it. If you have to find a word to describe it. Perhaps, the sentence of standing on an equal footing is not raising Long Yu high. No, that kid's movements haven't stopped yet, so there won't be anything left to do, right? Carp's expression changed slightly, and he hurriedly said. In the face of Long Yu's endless means, what he urgently thinks about now is that someone can overturn his speculation. However, just as this idea came into being, a powerful rolling aura descended from the sky, rolling down the sea like a waterfall. At this moment, as if the air was circulating in the sky, there was a trace of stagnation, and an invisible big hand clenched their hearts. The strange feeling made them have no time to think, and hurriedly looked up at the sky. The first scene to enter the scene made their pupils shrink suddenly, and an inexplicable roar sounded from their foreheads. Of lead accumulated above the 9 heavens seemed to be suddenly pushed away by a pair of invisible hands. Under the impact of the huge air wave, a huge meteorite with a diameter of several kilometers broke through the clouds. Facing the dance from Long Yu's mouth a moment ago. This scene in front of you, if you let outsiders know. I'm afraid not only danced, but also couldn't hold down the coffin board. Does this still make people alive? Bang! As soon as the huge meteorite appeared in the sight of everyone, it seemed that even the last shackles from the air and clouds were instantly broken. The heavy air swooped and rolled down with a tenacious posture. Facing the apocalyptic scene in front of them, Akainu and Kizaru were the first to wake up. Uchiha Ryayu, you lunatic! Akainu roared. From the first meeting, he underestimated Long Yu. But the second time, the third time, and even now that they met again, they all thought that they knew all about the great skeleton demon who came out of the advancing city. Chapter 563, Give me a quick retreat. However, in the face of this scene that fell from the sky, like the end of the day, it subverted his cognition. Who has always thought that he knows the best is the most unfamiliar. This huge gap makes Akainu unacceptable. Hee, Akainu, this is my last gift to you. I hope that after the dance, we can meet again next time. The magic seal that Long Yu turned over with both hands had already stopped. The tens of meters huge Susanoo collapsed with a bang. A door of space was opened in an instant, and before everyone's eyes, he stepped forward. 8-foot Chongu Jade. Kizaru's roar sounded without warning. Soon he saw endless golden light, which quickly condensed and formed behind Long Yu. However, before he could display his attack, the space gate that was torn out had disappeared out of thin air. Laser beam lost its target all of a sudden, and sank directly into the sea below, blowing up large waves. Looking at the lost trace, and the attack of the Kayabashi failed. At this moment, no matter was Crane, or Garp, even Akainu and Kayabu dared not say anything about chasing the Glossiaki and the skeleton demon. Facing the huge meteorite falling from the sky, the only thing they can do is to dance for this madness. Bastard, skeleton demon, even if you escape to the ends of the earth, I will sink you into the sea. Akainu roared with a twisted expression. As far as this is concerned, the failure of the mission to encircle and suppress Wald is already a foregone conclusion. Everyone give me a quick retreat. Kazuna, Chingzi, join hands with me to crush this meteorite. Meteor volcano. Akainu roared again and again, as if even the world was shaken by it. Crane, who was standing on the deck of the battleship, subconsciously looked at Mihawk, the eagle-eyed Shichibukai. The face of such means, their Chiwahai was also covered within the attack range. If you don't dance as well, I'm afraid it will be difficult to get out of the body. Dozen nautical miles away, on the huge deck of the Goryak. With blood on the corners of his mouth, Wald, as well as Dongli and Ki, had their bull's eyes widened, looking at the huge meteorite swooping down in the distant sky, with shock on their faces. As crew members, they all believed that they knew the confidence of their captain. Never thought of it, this wishful thinking. If it wasn't for Chingzi's last carelessness, he didn't attack in advance, giving them a chance to display the strongest lying hegemony. I am afraid that once they are trapped, Long Yu will not be able to use this kind of fierce and unparalleled killer move. Thinking of this, Dongli and Brokey couldn't help but look at each other and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Damn! The little devil, as expected, has been teasing me. Crocodile clenched his fists suddenly. When I thought about it, the hard battle I thought of that day was nothing compared to the scene in front of me. In particular, he attacked a Kainu in public, but was successfully evaded by elementalization. At the same time, the high-level domineering displayed by the two giants, Dongli and Broki, showed the power that directly robbed him of his limelight. It can be said that at this moment, the self-evaluation of the dignified predecessor, the seven-armed sea crocodile, in this kind of peak battle, has become a passerby. Tomorrow's front page, it is very good to have him a small corner. Subconsciously, he glanced around at the three figures on the deck. Who was the first to join Fairy Tale and considered himself the most powerful, had a feeling of being at the bottom. What's the matter, you're not going to dance, are you? Long Yu's voice suddenly sounded. The people present, nervously tense, soon saw that a door of space opened on the deck. Looking at the slightly tired Long Yu walking out of it, Crocodile flashed a murderous intent in the depths of his pupils. That ridiculous idea was quickly suppressed by him. He joined Fairy Tale, but unlike the others, it was caused by the contract. In Crocodile's eyes, as long as within 3 years, Long Yu will reveal a flaw. He will definitely not hesitate at all, rise up to kill him, and be ashamed. However, the time they spent together was very short, but after experiencing that scene behind the scenes, Crocodile became more and more unable to see through the boy in front of him. It can be said that the current Long Yu gives the impression that it may be the end of the shot. Told Crocodile at the next moment that Long Yu had beheaded a Navy admiral. He would never doubt it. After all, the young man in front of him was hidden too deeply and had too many masks. Haha, Crocodile, with your expression, you didn't intend to kill me just now, did you? Long Yu patted Crocodile on the shoulder with a dry smile, making him feel an inexplicable electric shock, and his nerves suddenly became tense. It feels as if the child has done something wrong and the parent sees it through. Haha, you don't have to be so nervous. Long Yu laughed loudly and said, this is not the first time I have encountered such an idea, but I will never pursue it. After all, I've been on the pirate ship of mine, but no one really wants to kill me. I am still a little blindly confident about my personality. Having said that, Long Yu raised his head and glanced at the accumulated lead clouds in the sky, and said, it's getting late, let's go quickly. In addition to Whitebeard, there is also Kaido, a madman who wants to commit suicide, in the sky. Chapter 564, 2.1 billion. These words fell, not to mention Crocodile, even Walder's expression changed slightly. They despise the reputation of the four sovereigns at sea, but at this juncture, they did not dare to wave at will. Looking back, on the horizon in the distance, the huge meteorite collided with various fireworks-like attacks, and quickly set sail to escape this sea area. 3 days later, countless news birds, like locusts, quickly sent newspapers to all parts of the world in the first half of the Great Waterway. The huge front page, from the beginning, the 3 generals of the Navy headquarters encircled and suppressed the old legend of the great pirate Walder, has already been replaced with a new title. The rise of the 5 emperors at sea, and the fierceness of the skeletons reappeared. For a time, the forces all over the world clearly saw the content described on the front page, and on the front page, the meteorite occupied almost a full page. It was simply shocking, beyond words for a long time. Chambord Archipelago, countless pirates, with the help of the main force of the Navy, landed on the island in search of opportunities to go to the New World. Facing the terrifying news of the rise of the 5th Emperor at sea, the entire island was in an uproar. Outside the number, the Navy headquarters was defeated again, the 3 generals were severely damaged, and the skeleton giant offered a reward of 2.1 billion to join the ranks of the new 5 emperors. A newsboy galloped down the road. Soon he was stopped by a burly old man with purple hair. Hey, what nonsense are you kidding? Our Navy admiral has not been seriously injured, just the big skeleton escaped with his tail between his tail. who was dressed as a recruit and stared at the bald head, snatched the newspaper, and then shouted first. Looking at the dozens of recruits in front of him blocking the way, the newsboy's face turned pale, and he was about to ask for mercy when Zephyr detectives stopped him. Anthony, Tong Yan Wuji, don't know him in the same way. Zephyr took out a stack of Bailey with his backhand, stuffed it into the newsboy, and signaled him to leave. Immediately looking at the contents of the newspaper, his expression gradually sank and said, "It seems that it is not that the strength of our navy has regressed, but that the pirates are growing faster." The bounty jumped from 1 billion to 21. The governments of the world were shocked. The sand crocodile, who should have been beheaded, was among the two. History Chang, the giant pirate captain who offered a bounty of over 100 million 100 years ago, and even the world destroyer Wald was included by him. It seems that there is not much time left for our navy. Chang's voice returned to the top, causing the faces of these originally ambitious recruits to change dramatically. In their eyes. After graduating from the greenhouse-like training camp, the sea outside will definitely have a piece of sky that belongs to them. However, the facts in front of them are a bit cruel. Even their most respected teachers sighed like this, so what should their navy do? Teacher, don't you always teach us not to grow others' ambition and destroy our own prestige? Ain is also the one who can speak on such occasions. Among the pirates, there is a big skeleton monster that is rumored to be the rise of the new 5 emperors, but I think the teacher must have thought of some way to deal with it. These words fell, the eyes of the students in the field turned and locked on Zephyr's body. Feeling the urgency in his eyes, Zephyr calmed down a little, then patted Ain's shoulder with a dry smile, and said, "Come with me to see the warring states at the Navy headquarters, to break the 5th, the endgame. I am afraid that Laxus will be needed." Boy. At the same time, the naval headquarters entered the sea. Warring states looked gloomy, standing on the high platform. Not long ago, he was in this place, mobilizing the sailors. The plan is to encircle and suppress the legendary great pirates of the old times and restore the lost face of the navy. Never occurred to me that at the last moment, a big skeleton demon would be killed. Even more, it was an unprecedented way to press the navy's face on the floor and rub it fiercely. Marshal of the Warring States period, Admiral Akainu and the others have returned. A huge giant figure walked quickly from behind. In the end, it stayed by the side of the Warring States. Due to the human trafficking of giants in the past, the Navy headquarters also gained the combat power of many giants. This time, many vice admirals were sent to encircle Wald. However, due to the huge size of the giant, it did not accompany him, and most of the time, it played the role of guarding the headquarters. Looking at the gloomy Warring States, Longs couldn't help but ask, "Marshal Warring States, is the information true?" Lost for hundreds of years, the two leaders of the giant soldier pirates not only did not die, but also took refuge in the great skeleton demon. Well, the Warring States suddenly raised his head and said, "Longs, I know that the blue ghost Dongli and the red ghost Broki are your heroes of Elba, but don't forget, they are pirates now, and you are the navy. However, since your Elbaf was destroyed, the two giant elders were killed. Although you still have the kingdom of giants led by Prince Loki, the strength of the giants has also been greatly reduced. There is no systematic guidance experience, even learning giant strikes have also become more difficult." Chapter 565, Dumping the Pot. I heard that a new giant pirate has appeared at sea recently, and the leader is a man named Helding, who seems to be able to use your giant's tactical hero spear. Helding Longs was stunned for a moment, and said, "I remember that kid, but he was pestering the two elders at that time, clamoring to surpass the two leaders. The level of hard work, but better than anyone, he can learn the spear of heroes, is really touching, but unfortunately he only wants to be a pirate, otherwise he will be much better than me and John in the navy." The technique of the giant's martial arts has been passed down from generation to generation. It is difficult to explore on your own. I didn't expect the two leaders to disappear for 100 years, and have also learned the high-level domineering. If it was me, I would be willing to spend 20 years. 20 years of learning domineering. Sengoku's cheeks twitched slightly. With a lifespan of 300 years would say such words without back pain. Was someone else, they would have already passed their prime, or they would have farted on the sea. Of course, Lance can't be blamed for this either. God has endowed giants with extraordinary strength and physique, and the practice of domineering is more than twice as difficult as that of ordinary people. After all, not everyone is Dongli and Brokey, who have dueled for 100 years and have beaten them more than 70,000 times. Coupled with the precise and domineering training methods provided by the system, everything will come naturally. Okay, I've made an appointment with Zephyr, and when Laxus arrives, I'll see if there's a good way to practice. If you giants can learn domineering, even the most superficial domineering will affect the strength of our navy. In terms of improvement, it is also the best. Sengoku sighed and looked up at the approaching warship. The current series of defeats, as well as the so-called rise of the new 5 sovereigns, have made the challenge to the Navy headquarters even more severe. If the solution is not found in time, I am afraid that the naval headquarters will have a hard time dealing with the waves rolled up on this sea. I object. A stern voice came from the sea. The expressions of Sengoku and Longs changed slightly, and they hurriedly followed the voice. The first thing that came into view was that he had an unusually gloomy expression. The face of Tianyi Zhengxing, they came back alive, but for the 5 warships at the time of departure, this lineup was equivalent to the Demon Slaughter Order. The number of warships that have returned now is only 4. Akainu, who was the commander of this mission, felt like his face was being rubbed against the ground afterward. Akainu, what are you against? Warring States frowned. What he was most worried about had happened. As an admiral of the Navy and Akainu who grew up watching Sengoku, he knew very well that Akainu carried out the so-called absolute justice. In the original book, there is a sentence. The real one who is a pirate is Blackbeard, and the real one who is a navy is Akainu. An extreme darkness, an extreme justice, but the symbol in the world of One Piece. Against what? S face sank, and he shouted sternly, Marshal of the Warring States period, isn't he planning to invite some Laxus with that guy Zephyr, join the Navy headquarters, and become a recruit instructor? Didn't he threaten to kill the Chihuahua crocodile, but now Crocodile is resurrected and intervened, ruining our plan to encircle and suppress Walder. This kid of unknown origin is not trustworthy at all. The awe-inspiring voice echoed above the huge port. In the face of Akainu's divine reply, the people present were stunned. Even the generals are throwing the blame. But, can this throwing skill be any better? Hey, Akainu, the domineering has not grown, but the means of throwing the blame have grown. An old voice, without the slightest ambiguity, came from the farther sea. The violent scene made everyone stunned for a while, and when they could see clearly who was coming, they all showed bitterness on their faces. If it is said that in the naval headquarters, Garp can ridicule the general, then the person who is most qualified to reprimand the general of the naval headquarters is only Zephyr, the chief instructor of recruits. Yo-yo, Mr. Zephyr didn't expect that you came to the headquarters in person, and Akainu also complained just now, so don't take it seriously, teacher. The yellow monkey hurriedly opened his mouth to smooth things out. They are disciples of Zephyr, but their majors are the true fruit ability, which deviates from Zephyr's concept of physical arts. In the boot camp, there were frequent clashes. Right now, Akainu is losing one after another, and Kizaru is worried, and even if they disagree, they will fight. Old Zephyr, don't you stay in the naval recruit camp and come to this place for the so-called Laxus. Akainu's face sank, and he shouted sharply. A nasty boy who can change something in the Navy. If you can defeat the 4 emperors of the sea, or you can defeat the so-called new 5 emperors skeleton demon, if you can't, what's the use of coming here? 560th chapters, Gambling. The rolling voice made the people in the field look at each other in dismay. For Akainu's fallacy, it is undoubtedly difficult to answer. After all, the identity of the general is placed here. Looking at the angry Akainu, Sengoku subconsciously looked at Zephyr. In the huge port, the atmosphere suddenly became depressed. Many gazes in the field all turned and locked on Zepha's body. The face of this somewhat stubborn student, it is even more expensive to exist like a general. There was an inexplicable urgency in their hearts. Eager to see what it is like to be educated by the teacher. Akainu, you were wrong. Zepha said in a deep voice. All along, you have only paid attention to the improvement of your own strength, as if you were inclined to the development of fruit ability, but neglected the cultivation of domineering and physical skills, but ignored what balance is. Having said that, Zepha looked around the field and said, if our naval headquarters can develop multipolarity and diversification, so that the combat power of the bottom and even the middle level can be improved, then the combat power of the top will also change. Much. When I didn't see that kid's training manual, I also held the idea of rejecting people thousands of miles away from you. However, the current naval headquarters is not. The glory of the past is comparable to that of the past. 4 emperors stand side by side on the sea, and the 5 emperors rise. If we can't break the deadlock as soon as possible and improve the strength of the naval headquarters, then we will be waiting for death. Bureau. The voice of Chang's words, at this moment, seemed to be infused with a magical sound, reverberating between the heavens and the earth, and there was no way to disperse it for a long time. It made many people's expressions suddenly change drastically. As the chief instructor of the naval training camp, Zepha has the words to say this comment under his decades of coaching experience. For a time, everyone's eyes were locked on Akainu's body. Among the 3 generals, their positions have long been clear. Chingzi was the first in favor of inviting Laxus to join Navy boot camp. Who only punched the card when the salary was received, and he didn't care about who he invited. Right now, the biggest remaining objection is undoubtedly Akainu. Okay, very good, Mr. Zepha, you were right. Akainu looked gloomy, and said okay twice. Since Teacher Zepha, if you are determined to invite an outsider to come to our new instructor, then I will take a bet with you. I will select 3 people from the Navy to teach him personally, and he is also looking for 3 people outside to teach him personally. After 3 months, if he can defeat the Akainu I taught him to join him, he will definitely not object. Gambling to face Akainu's persistence, the present. The person's expression changed slightly. Zepha frowned and said, Akainu, I'm afraid this is a bit inappropriate. It seems that it is difficult to evaluate the selection criteria. 3 months is not too long, not too short. Train a newcomer who is as blank as a piece of paper, it seems too short. After all, in the Navy boot camp, many are drilled from childhood. Some extremely gifted people have to study for at least 3 years before they are eligible to graduate. It's only 3 months now, I'm afraid something is wrong. Master Zepha, General Akainu's bet is also very interesting. An unexpected voice came out from inside the phone bug. The violent scene made everyone's nerves tense at once. Looking at the voice, the first thing that catches the eye is Garp holding a phone bug and digging his nostrils. Haha, I saw that the 2 of you were arguing, so I called that kid and asked you to make it clear in person. Garp laughed out loud. Boy, do you mean to agree to General Akainu's bet? If you have any ideas, feel free to say, but you can bring my grandson here. Also, don't give up on training. Yesterday, I called that kid and clamored to say that you have developed a new fruit skill in your hands, saying that the next time you see this old man, you have to beat me up. Speaking of which, Garp patted his thigh and said, it's the first time I've seen that kid so arrogant. The people present were stunned. Looking at Garp, who opened his mouth and talked hard with his grandson. It's too fast to open a small stove. Mr. Garp, you have a grandson too. The ghost spider couldn't help but ask. In the Navy, due to the appearance of Zepha as an admiral, when chasing the pirates, the family members were silenced in revenge. When the Navy was shocked. A new regulation has also been issued. All family members of the high-ranking Navy must be kept secret. So for decades, for the naval hero Garp, what members of the family are unknown. Now that a grandson suddenly appeared, and he was trained under the command of Laxus, who was highly respected by Zephyr. This was too unpredictable. HMPH, a fledgling boy, mixed with a fledgling boy, can find out. What a big wave. Akainu snorted coldly and said, Laxus, in order to avoid you saying that I bullied you with nobody, let you decide the rules. Of course, if someone in the Navy headquarters is willing to train you, that's fine too. Chapter 567. Shame. Duh. The coercive words were spit out, causing the expressions of many people in the field to change slightly. However, they were very curious as to what training methods Long Yu had, which Zephyr admired. But for the sake of a new instructor who doesn't know the depths, it would be inappropriate to offend the current Admiral of the Navy. I would too. If the Lieutenant General can do it, I'm willing to try it. 3 urgent cries rang out suddenly. Seeing Ain and Bins raising their hands all of a sudden, a smile appeared on Zephyr's face. As for Longs, who was standing behind the Warring States period, it surprised them. After all, giants have long lifespans and serve longer than they do. But the drawbacks are also great. On top of the domineering practice, it is undoubtedly a huge springboard. It can be said that Lonzi's statement is undoubtedly a huge threshold. Okay, very good. I didn't expect that there are people in the Navy who are interested in Neuraxis. Akainu said goodbye twice, and looked at the 3 with cold eyes. After a pause, he said in a deep voice, Laxus, what are your thoughts? It's not bad to pick up 3 ready-made 3s in the Navy. At least, when you lose, you won't be too embarrassed. And said, General Akainu, I have no plans to choose personnel in the Navy. Of course, they want to study with me, and I don't mind. However, in the decision of 33, I will not use one of your Navy. On the contrary, you can choose any person in the Navy, including Commodore, Rear Admiral, Lieutenant Admiral. The small voice came from the phone bug, causing many people in the field to take a deep breath. With new recruits as the maximum limit they expected. It never occurred to me that when Long Yu opened his mouth, he would raise this limit from recruit to lieutenant general. It can be said that among the naval headquarters, the lieutenant general who has grown up is not the best, and the existence of superior combat power. In the field all swished and landed on Akainu. In their eyes, they thought that Akainu's appointment would make the so-called Laxus feel embarrassed. Never occurred to me that this guy whom Zephyr admired so much would put forward even crazier conditions for the bet. Even lieutenant generals can be chosen. Does it mean that the people trained by him can match the so-called lieutenant generals? Akainu Shensheng. Drink. However, don't worry, I will not make a bet with you in the future. After 3 months, I hope you can arrive at the Navy headquarters on time, and I will pick you up here in person. Hee, then there is General Lao Kai Dog. Long Yu laughed dryly and said, however, if anyone wants to train with the boat, they can also wait for me in the Chambord Islands. I will arrive in 3 days. These words, Long Yu directly hung up the phone bug. HMPH, in the end, you still keep in mind the people in the Navy. I hope you really don't run away in the end. Some good candidates will come out. Akainu snorted coldly. Yinju's gaze swept away in the field, and said, pass my order, as long as you are a member of the Navy. Anyone who wants to receive my training can sign up. Maybe you have any juniors you value, you can also recommend them. However, I will put the ugly words first, and my training should not be neglected in the slightest, no matter what. Any grandson, and son is no exception. The rolling voices echoed in the huge port like a wave. As for Akainu's last sentence, they clearly knew that it was aimed at Garp. After all, Garp, a naval hero, put his grandson under the command of Laxus for training. That was an indirect acknowledgement of his means and ability. General Akainu, I want to train with you. The bald boy standing behind Zephyr walked out quickly. Anthony. Ayin raised her brows, but was quickly stopped by Zephyr's detectives. Who else wants to train with Admiral Akainu? This is a rare opportunity. Zephyr glanced at the recruits behind him. It can be said that before long you appeared, the general was the target they admired and pursued at last. Is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to learn from the current generals. My name is Xu-En, and I am willing to. I'm very good, and I do too. I'm Drake, and I do too. Seeing the three people who came out of the crowd again, Zephyr's expression was slightly moved. These three, among his students, are all outstanding talents. Have already applied for early graduation, and I have also been selected by various branches. The biggest feature is that the devil fruit ability is similar, and the heart is similar to Akainu Kizaru. Chapter 568, Brigadier General. They all believe that unilateral development of fruit ability can further enhance their own strength. This time Zephyr went to the headquarters. In addition to coming for Laxus, there were also some students who were selected out of the way. Okay, you are all devil fruit power users, right? Akainu glanced at it, the expression on Zephyr's face changed, and said, there are many ways to become stronger in 3 months, but I will take everyone to a shortcut, which can improve the strength as quickly as possible. It can be said that as long as you complete the training I handed you well, once the competition is completed and the military merit is achieved, it is not impossible to become a commodore directly. The expressions of the new brigadier generals changed. Once they graduate from the Navy boot camp, most of them can become second lieutenants, etc. Some outstanding people can become majors and lieutenants. But as soon as he graduated, he became a brigadier general, which was like a sweet pastry. In the face of the dignified general, the rhetoric that was put down, many students showed expressions of remorse. Feeling the changes in the field, Akainu's face showed a hint of satisfaction, and after looking around the field, he said, everyone, don't worry, in order to convince the public, in addition to mainly training these 4 recruits, I also allow other generals participate in training, but once they participate, no matter how high your rank is, it is one of my soldiers. Having said that, Akainu looked back at the warring states and said, Marshal of the warring states, this is all I have to say. If there is nothing else, I will leave first. Leaving these words, Akainu's gloomy Shishui face softened a little in the past few days, and before everyone's eyes, he strode away. 444 recruits, after looking at each other, quickly followed. HMPH, Akainu is really arrogant, as soon as he opens his mouth, he is a brigadier general. Karp scooped out his nostrils and snorted coldly, saying, however, according to what he said, 3 months later, that kid brought me a grandson of a lieutenant general, and this old man saved a lot of hearts. Cap, it's still broad daylight, stop daydreaming here. Sengoku rolled his eyes and said, however, that kid, if you don't pick someone from the Navy headquarters, can you really compare with Akainu in 3 months? If you find people outside, there are very few people with strength. In the conversation just now, Long Yu had agreed to let the people from the Navy study with the ship. But the same goes for people who don't use the Navy. It's not necessary to leave people with solid foundations, and go to dig another, wasting time. Okay, you don't have to overdo it in the warring states period, that family. That this guy can study such a systematic training method is enough to show that he is not simple, maybe he already has a choice in his heart, and he is more powerful than the new recruits trained by my old man. Zephyr smiled and patted Sengoku's shoulder. Ain, go back to the Chambord Islands and study with Laxus. As for Bins, stay with me. Ain looked back at Bins, showing a hint of hesitation. What's the matter, are you worried about going alone? Who had been silent, looked at Ain who nodded shyly, and said, Smog, you should go too. I was stunned by smoke. He followed Qingzi and was transferred back to the Navy headquarters from Rog Town. On the way, he encountered the task of encircling and suppressing Wald, but he did not participate in it. After all, in that kind of battle of the level, even the generals are helpless, and it is a joke that he goes. However, Jean Small never thought that Qingzi would let him study with Laxus. What's the matter? Don't forget what you lost to him in Rog Town. Qingzi looked back at Smog and said with a rare smile, perhaps, as Mr. Karp said, you can still be promoted to Lieutenant General after graduating in 3 months. Lieutenant General Smoker was stunned for a moment, he was just a colonel now. There is also a brigadier general, a major general, in the middle, in order to be able to reach the lieutenant general. This process looks short, but in practice, it requires a lot of military merit, but the real stumbling block is strength. If it really is like what Karp said, he can become a lieutenant general after graduation. Does that mean that this is the 13th estuary of Chambord Archipelago, which will be a crash course in 3 months, and it is a mess at this moment? Dozens of pirates lay down on the ground, and there was a sound of mourning. A grim-faced man with scars, holding a giant mace, slammed into the ground with a bang, breathing heavily. Immediately, he roared hysterically. You bastard, get out of here, I am the great pirate Oral with a reward of 80 million, and I will definitely kill you. Really, I also really want to try it, but unfortunately you don't have the chance. The cold voice suddenly sounded. All of a sudden, Olar's nerves were tense to the extreme. Before I could think about it, I quickly clenched the giant mace in my hand. However, a white smoke quickly emerged behind him, and recently formed the appearance of Smoker. Chapter 569, So Simple. Cross, Smoke Strangulation. Endless white smoke surged out of Smoker's body. The moment he stretched out his hands, he quickly wrapped around Oral's body. The next moment, before he could react, his huge head was suddenly broken by 2 huge hands that were turned into smoke. Bang! The huge body that lost its life force was smashed to the ground. Looking at the dead pirate who could no longer die, the white smoke turned from Smog rolled and finally returned to normal. Senior Smog, this is already the 8th pirate with a bounty over 10 million, and it is also the existence with the highest bounty. You can already be promoted to Brigadier General based on military merit alone. Ain flashed out in the dark. On her body was also covered with dust. It seems that when Smoker made his move just now, he didn't have any spare time. Your strength is also very good. Smog took out a cigar with his backhand and lit it again, saying, students who can be valued by Teacher Zephyr really have something special, no matter what. Is fruit ability or physical skills, they are very powerful, especially the round break, which is enough to cut iron blocks. It's just, I want to know, with your strength and physical skills, why did you have to risk the hostility of the Akainu general to you, and make such a public statement? For Smog, also as a student of Zephyr, the strength he relied on for graduation that day mainly came from the development of fruit ability. In his eyes, it is actually the same concept as Akainu Kiarasu and others, that the way to practice taijutsu is too difficult. It is too slow to increase the strength. Therefore, focus on the development of fruit ability. It is for this reason that Smoker is not valued in Zephyr's eyes. Ain's fruit ability doesn't seem to be too diligent. That's an extraordinary existence. Looking at the present, and even among the graduates where Small was in the past, few people can do it. Senior Smoker, Teacher Zephyr, Yan mentioned this matter before Teacher Texas joined the Navy boot camp, but this time with Senior Smoker, the teacher didn't tell the teacher that he was acquiescing to me. Reveal it to Senior Smoker to know. Ain said after a moment of hesitation. Oh, there is such a thing, is it Mr. Zephyr? What new teaching concept has been proposed, or is it a secret? Smog raised his brows involuntarily. In his eyes, ZFA is a strict teacher, but for the sake of his students, he is someone who can't wait to give all the things he knows to the students. Now there is such a requirement, which undoubtedly exceeds Smoker's perception. Actually, this round broken foot was taught to me by Teacher Laxus. Ain suddenly spoke up. Laxus Smog couldn't help but startled, and said, Ain, what do you mean? You knew Laxus early on. In Smog's eyes, he had also learned the 6 forms in the Navy boot camp, and he knew exactly how difficult it was to be stunned. It takes a lot of time and energy to reach the level of cutting iron. No, senior smoker, you misunderstood. If I had known Teacher Laxus early in the morning, I'm afraid I would have mastered all the 6 styles in the 3 years of the Navy recruit camp. Ain shook his head, showing a look of longing. I was able to learn the footsteps, mainly from Senior Bastius's comments on the 6 styles of Laxus. On that day, Teacher Zepha, like Senior Smog, held a skeptical attitude and bet with Marshall of the Warring States period. Binns and I were fortunate enough to be the betting chips. In the end, after reading the manual, the bottleneck of Lanzhou's comprehension was as if it's a matter of course, and it's integrated. Not only can it be displayed smoothly, but it has also reached the point of cutting iron. The slightly long-sounding voice echoed in this deserted port. When Smog heard the words, he couldn't help but startled, and said, "It's that simple." In his eyes, Yin's remarks obviously skipped the process of hard study and research in the middle, and the result is the result as soon as he speaks. Looking at Smog, who was full of suspicion, Yin gave a wry smile and said, "Senior Smog, I can't explain this matter clearly. I just remember that when I saw these 6 style annotations that day, my mind was rumbling. It feels too strange to learn it directly, when Senior Smog, if selected, should also have the opportunity to watch 1 or 2. Silent. He was also a Navy teacher and Zepha's teacher. He believed what Ain said, and it was not wrong. It's just that this process is too mysterious, making him have a feeling of being difficult and believing. Smog sighed and calmed down a little. If Laxus's methods are really so mysterious, what if I call him a teacher? However, 7 days have passed since the agreed 3-day period. Did he back down in the middle? This time, they were selected to study with the ship, not only because of the bet made by Akainu, but also because of the naval headquarters, to investigate the teaching ability of Long Yu. Senior Smoker, I think absolutely not. Ain shook his head, and immediately looked at the beautiful eyes on the horizon in the distance. His pupils shrunk suddenly. Senior Smog, look, there is a boat that didn't sail over there. It's sailing fast here. A boat without sails. Chapter 570, Human Navigation. Smokey was startled. In the Navy, there is a steam-powered ship, but this ship is not only without steam, but also without the help of wind. It is obviously a little impossible to sail on the sea. If you just go with the flow, you will not be able to keep speeding up. Now this ship is obviously approaching this way without error. That Smog frowned, his pupils shrunk suddenly after he could see the situation on the sea clearly. Ain, look, does this ship rely on manpower to sail? Yin was startled by the inexplicable words of human sailing, and his expression changed in an instant after seeing the situation on the sea clearly. Bang! 2 black shadows, like swordfish, jumped up in the sea, and finally hit the sea with one head. The thick chain wrapped around them looked extremely unsightly under the splash of seawater. When the 2 of them fell into the water again, the speed of the mast sailboat, being pulled forward, was even faster. Seeing this scene, Smog and Ain couldn't help but glance at each other, finally making sure that they were not wrong. On this dangerous sea, there is a ship that breaks the rules. Instead of relying on the wind and the braking ability of the boat, it is just 2 people who are pulling forward in the sea. That kind of resistance, it's not as simple as 1 + 1. Not to mention the 2 men pulling the boat, even the person who came up with this method is a monster-like existence. Thinking of this, Smoker and Ain couldn't help but hit a cold shock. The person who came up with this crazy idea, could it be the Laxus roar? They have been waiting here for a long time. The deafening roar sounded suddenly. On the coast near the port, a huge black shadow appeared on the sea. The next moment, the water broke directly out. The body length of more than 10 meters, and the sea snake full of barbed fangs like a sickle, rushed towards the 2 people in the water as soon as it appeared. The face of the fishy wind, which has long been eyeing here, Ain and Smog's expressions changed, just as they were about to make a move. Afterimage instantly appeared on the Sea King class. The dozens of arms that were stretched indefinitely, like a rocket, slammed into the sea snake head-on. Rubber bazooka. Bang! A dull thunder-like collision sound came out. 3 or 4 meters in diameter, the huge snake head was shot and flew out in an instant. Under the catharsis of the huge force, the body of more than 10 meters was directly taken flying, and it was heavily smashed on the pirate ship that was originally docked in the port. With the rumbling sound, the pirate ship was smashed, and the sea snake was directly killed. Seeing this scene, Smoker and Ain, God. Under the slight change of color, I saw the person who took the shot, staggering in footsteps, and planted his head in the sea. Hey, Luffy, don't be brave if you can't do it. Zoro Sanji, hurry up and save this fool, this is obviously the prey of Sister Dusky. Nami shouted, and it sounded on the deck. Nami-san, look at me, I will definitely bring Luffy back. Who was still dragging the pirate ship forward as if he had lost his strength, suddenly turned his eyes into pink hearts, and with his strength surged, he dived into the water. Sex Kappa. Zoro showed a look of disgust. Beauty is not very attractive to him. But when I thought about it, after boarding the ship, I lost to Dusky, who was very similar to Guina, 58 times in kendo. This made Zoro face, can't help but think of when he was a child, he lost more than 1,000 times, and he didn't even have a chance to save his face. Right now, he can use Dasichi to realize his dream, but his strength is completely poor, so he clenched his teeth and plunged into the sea. After 3 or 4 minutes of Smog and Ain, 3 wet figures finally collapsed on the shore like ooze. The single-masted ship that sailed by human pulling was also brought to the port. Except for the 3 people who fell into the water, Ain and Smoker finally saw clearly who was on the deck of the ship. Especially when he saw that the man wearing a cloak and coat with a cold and arrogant face, Smoker's expression couldn't help sinking, and said, Laxus is here. Mr. Laxus is here, where is he? Ain was startled for a moment and looked around. Under the guidance of Smog, there was a hint of stunned expression on the pretty face. To rumors, Laxus is very young, but in Ain's eyes, the person who can go further on the road of teaching should be a gentle existence. At least you should wear a white shirt, light zephyr, and a pair of small glasses. Never occurred to me that Laxus was a cold, arrogant, domineering president. Smog, I didn't expect you to come to study with the ship. After long you glanced at Smog indifferently, he looked at Ayan and said, you should be teacher Zephyr, Ayan, one of the best freshmen in this class. Allah, Mr. Laxus, you know my name. Ayan was stunned for a moment, then said shyly, Teacher, you are too high for me. Ayan has not yet conducted the actual combat assessment, and the final graduation result is still unclear. How can it be called the best? If it spreads out, I am afraid it will lose the prestige of teacher Zephyr. Looking at the shy Ayan, Long Yu was not surprised. Chapter 571. You Green Algae Head. At present, Ain is still a flower in a greenhouse, and has not yet encountered the bloody situation in the original book, Wabel slaughtered the recruits. Seeing that the whole boat was wiped out, even the most respected teacher Zephyr had an arm cut off. For any one person, it is enough to change the heart. It can be said that it is very good not to go crazy. Mr. Laxus, you asked me to swing the knife 10,000 times a day for training. I have already completed it. Will I continue to increase the weight? Dasky held Shiu and walked out behind the deck. After looking at Smog, he revealed a hint of surprise. Isn't this Lieutenant Colonel Smog who was defeated by the teacher in Rog Town that day? Why is he here? No, as the teacher said a few days ago, the students who are assigned by the Navy to go on board. That day, Dusky had seen Smog's impressive strength and fiery temper with his own eyes. I didn't expect that the Navy would recommend him. A hint of surprise flashed in the depths of Long Yu's eyes. He glanced at the black wrist guard on Dasiki's wrist and said, How much black steel is there in the cabin? No more. After hesitating for a moment, Dasichi said, They have already used it up. This kind of metal is very precious, and the output is very small. The 3 of them together have consumed 3,000 caddies. Having said that, Dusky looked at the shore, and the three drenched figures showed a monster-like expression on their faces. This kind of metal with low density and heavy volume is indeed as precious as sea-floor stone. It seems that it can only be found in the Chambord archipelago in large quantities. Long Yu nodded and said, since there is no Shanghai gang, then you don't need to add extra weight for your next training. Continue to swing the knife 30,000 times, and it must be completed before noon. No, the teacher. Dusky responded with a sentence. Without the slightest objection, he turned around and continued to walk aside, swinging the knife slowly. However, this kind of boring sword-swinging mode and the series of strange scenes in front of him made Smog frown. This training is too strange. What's more, in Smog's eyes, such a simple training, to a certain extent, is a bottleneck. Maybe useful for ordinary people, but for the strong, is it really effective? After Smog's messy thoughts, I couldn't help but look up at Long Yu. For a time, the four eyes met, so that Smoker had a kind of feeling, it seems that the two of you are very sleepy with my training. Long Yu glanced at Smog indifferently and said, however, since the Navy has chosen you to accompany the ship training, I also have the responsibility to guide you. However, I believe that if you want to take the medicine orally, I think it's the fist that has the final say. Having said that, Long Yu stepped down, and the whole person disappeared out of thin air like a ghost. Appeared again, already behind Smoker and Ain. The violent scene made the nerves of the two tense to the extreme. Before I could think about it, I hurriedly turned around and put on a fighting stance. In their eyes, Long Yu's speed was too fast, so fast that even the naked eye couldn't catch it. In this case, there is only one way to do it. Arrogance of seeing and hearing. Unfortunately, Smog is now a colonel, but he is not proficient in two-color arrogance. As for Ai Yin, he hasn't graduated from the boot camp yet, and he doesn't even have much experience in real life and death combat. Not even domineering awakening, let alone displaying it. It can be said that Smoker and Ain at the moment can only stare at them. Looking at the two of them who were like frightened birds, Long Yu remained expressionless and said, don't worry, I just touched your bottom, it seems that as I expected, there are not many surprises. Smog, I'll let Luffy fight you. Luffy Smog was stunned for a moment, he remembered that in the port that day, Garp himself mentioned this name. Could it be that this is a bargaining chip for him to bet against Akainu in the future? Teacher, Luffy is still in the spit, why don't I behead him? Sauron suddenly turned and stood up. Off the green turban wrapped around his arm with his backhand and wrapped it around his head. In Soren's eyes, during this period of time, in the hands of Dasichi, he had lost too much, and he was full of suffocation. It's rare to find an opportunity to vent, and of course I won't let it go. No, you green algae head, this rare opportunity to show in front of that beautiful lady who just arrived, of course let me come, my little leather shoes are already thirsty. Sanji suddenly ignited a small universe. However, in the face of the two's strong appearance, Luffy, who was still spitting water, suddenly opened his eyes and said, I will become the One Piece in the future. There is meat to eat. A hurried shout, Luffy suddenly turned over on the ground and stood up like a flash of light. However, he soon saw that his hands, like rubber, slipped down a little uncontrollably. Chapter 572, Kill Two Birds with One Stone. Of course, this strange phenomenon was quickly controlled by Luffy, and at the same time he explained in a hurry, Teacher, it doesn't count just now, I am now 1,000 caddies, but you promised to reward me with 1,000 caddies of barbecue, you but don't regret it. 10 days ago, after tasting the skewers grilled by Long Yu, Luffy was directly hooked. Every time I make a skewer, I almost make the bamboo sticks out of sparks. It can be said that Long Yu is well aware of the weaknesses of the Straw Hat's 3 major battles in the original novel. You made Lieutenant General Garp's grandson fight me. Smog frowned and said, are you underestimating me? Or do you want me to win? In Smoker's eyes, Luffy just shot the Sea Kings away with one move. But whether it is the connection of the follow-up tricks, and the speed of the movements, compared with him, it is still too far behind. Hee hee, Smoker seems to be in good spirits. Long Yu patted his shoulder with a dry smile and said, "It's good to have confidence, but don't pay too much attention to appearances. I see, if you call me teacher, you will never be convinced. If you win, I won't force you, but if you lose, you will not only call me teacher in the days to come, but also the captain of the ship. The location is still yours." "Chief." Smokey was startled. "It means to be responsible for cleaning the toilet," Nami added. Smoker's expression suddenly stiffened. He is also an admiral. Usually, this kind of thing is handed over to his subordinates. Now let him commit himself to being a director, obviously a little unacceptable. However, at the thought of being able to use someone younger than himself as a teacher without needing to be called, Smoker's face still flashed and he wanted to try. "Okay, I accept the bet." Smoker's eyes flickered, and he finally agreed. "Senior Smoker, don't you need to think about it? I think it seems to be tricky." Ain couldn't help but persuade. In her eyes, it would never be so easy for Long Yu to be recognized by a senior like Zephyr. After all, that is the existence that even the authority of a Kainu dares to provoke. "Don't worry, Ain, Lieutenant General Garp is his grandson, but he just went to sea not long ago." Smoker spit out a cigarette and said, "What's more, I'm a battle-hardened admiral. I don't believe that a newcomer can." Ain's face. Lu finally sighed and nodded. "Senior Nazmog, be careful." Leaving those words aside, Yin pushed it aside. Although he does not support Smoker to accept this bet, but facing training under Long Yu, Luffy is the grandson of the naval hero Mr. Garp. A hint of urgency on his face, he opened the phone bug video that he had prepared in advance. According to Zephyr's instructions before he left, if Long Yu doesn't mind, Yin needs to photograph the training process as much as possible. Long Yu had a panoramic view of all this. This time, he agreed to Zephyr and Sengoku's proposal and joined the Navy to help guide the recruits, all in order to get the world unrest point as soon as possible. Ain's actions at the moment are also conducive to raising his popularity among the Navy. Spread the teaching method and let Zephyr come to indirectly help him shorten the time for implementing the plan. It can be said to kill two birds with one stone. Let's start here. Seeing Ain retreating, the others also distanced themselves. Smog was the first to lose his temper. Quite right to this old Laxus who completely abused him. Smoker can't wait now, and wants to tear up Long Yu's confidence by defeating Luffy. In his eyes, Luffy is a superhuman devil fruit person. But compared with his natural devil fruit ability, the gap is very obvious. At least, to deal with a newcomer, only by elementalization, they can stand in an invincible position. Looking at Smog who was full of confidence, Long Yu said with a rare smile, "Since Smog is full of confidence, then Luffy asks you to be merciful." "Laxus, you let this kid show mercy to me, are you underestimating me?" Smoker's face darkened. He has always regarded Long Yu as a competitor, and now dedicating himself to a junior as a rival has already damaged his face. Now Long Yu is still letting Luffy show mercy. For Smoker, this is a shame at all. It seems, Smoker, you have the chance to win, but I advise you not to take it lightly, or you will lose miserably. Long Yu glanced at it lightly and said, "Luffy, I allow you to liberate." "Can be liberated." Luffy's eyes suddenly lit up, and he said, "Teacher, can I still use that trick?" "Yes." Long Yu nodded. Since he wants to fight, Long Yu still hopes to teach Smog a profound lesson. Chapter 573, Rubber Steam Cannon. "Okay, very good, it seems that my Smoker has been underestimated." Smog said hello twice, and a stern expression flashed in the depths of his pupils. "I also want to know, what kind of ability is the teacher who is highly respected by Zephyr?" Smokey's fighting stance unfolded, his eyes turned in vain, and fell on Luffy's body. In his eyes, to defeat a clumsy existence like Luffy, only 3 moves are needed. However, just as the idea came to his mind, the sight of his eyes made his pupils shrink suddenly. Bang! The dull sound of heavy objects landing suddenly echoed. A black gauntlet was thrown to the ground by Luffy. Clothes, shoes, trouser belts, etc. were taken off by him one by one and thrown on the ground. Every piece of land can smash the thick rock ground into cracks, spreading out cobweb-like cracks. When Luffy was left with only his cool clothes, the clumsy way of acting was swept away. Slightly loosening the joints of his limbs, Luffy's eyes turned in vain and locked on Smoker's body. Second gear. The simple words were spit out, and the feet peristaltic like air pumps. The next moment, the skin instantly turned red as if it was hot. The steam evaporated, Luffy's lazy eyes suddenly became sharp. Shave. Bang. Sonic boom. Haven't turned back to Smog, just felt a flower in front of me. An unexpected figure had already appeared in front of him. Rubber steam cannon. Boom. A punch. It rolled away like a thunderous explosion. The huge impact, like the yellow river bursting its banks, went out of control and poured head-on into Smog's abdomen. PFF'd. Smoker spat out a mouthful of blood, before he had time to react. Fell like a cannonball. At this moment, his mind went blank. No, there is only one left in my mind. This attack is too fast. The opponent is obviously not armed and domineering, but the speed is so fast that he doesn't even have the chance to turn his thoughts and cast elementalization. Boom! Smoker smashed his head on a soap tree hundreds of meters away. The huge impact force was vented, and the tree trunk, which could only be embraced by 7 or 8 people, was directly smashed into a deep pit. The huge soap tree shook violently. Yin, who witnessed this scene, couldn't help opening her mouth, looking at Long Yu with disbelief. Too fast. Even the video phone bugs don't know if they can record the scene just now. However, when I think of Smog, who was instantly knocked out and defeated, the training quality tested in this first battle. So that Yin didn't have time to think about it, and hurriedly sent the video. Teacher, is this really my speed? Luffy looked at his fist in shock. This is too fast, too powerful. The next time we meet, I will definitely be able to smash Grandpa flying. These days, since Luffy and others boarded the ship, they have been maintaining physical training with added weights. Under Long Yu's understanding, there is no weakest fruit, only the weakest ability. What's more, Long Yu clearly knows the root of Luffy's fruit development, and it is not difficult to pull him out to help him grow. As for the move just now, Long Yu passed weight training, coupled with the second gears to increase the speed, shaving to dash forward. Of Luffy increased by 4 or 5 times at once. For Smoker, who had a contemptuous attitude from the beginning, it was undoubtedly a nightmare. Senior Smoker, are you all right? Ain sent out the video of the battle. He rushed over quickly. Smoker was a bit embarrassed to lose, but they were also a navy with them. If you don't ask Smoker now, it's obviously a little wrong. Was smashed into the tree hole, suddenly came to his senses, feeling the heart-piercing pain in his chest, and hurriedly raised his head to look at Long Yu. He knew that the bet had been lost. Just like what Long Yu said at the beginning. That's not to despise him. On the contrary, it's really showing mercy. If the punch just now was not well controlled, Smoker would have absolutely no way to stay awake now. Senior Smog, don't force it. Ain hurriedly persuaded. In her eyes, this result was surprising. It was almost impossible to use elementalization, but Smog had indeed lost. Ain, don't worry. After Smog's expression changed one after another, he finally replied with a sense of relief. Body was surrounded by smoke, and at the same time of elementalization, it directly turned into a white smoke and flew towards Long Yu. Ah, do you still want to fight? Luffy reacted at once, and Yu tried to say, just right, I just finished warming up. Hearing these innocent words, Smoker's facial muscles were twitching. Looking up at Long Yu, he gritted his teeth and said, Mr. Lolixus, I admit defeat. Small voices echoed on the huge abandoned pier. Looking at this scene, Zoro and Sanji look down at the weight-bearing equipment on their bodies, in addition to their unexpected expressions, and urgent flames burned in their eyes. Chapter 574, Devil Fruit. For this crazy training of swimming and pulling the boat, they really resisted from the beginning. However, now I have seen with my own eyes that Luffy, who is naturally dumb, killed Smoker with one punch after the restriction was lifted. This makes them look forward to their own growth even more. Hee hee, little brother Laxus, it seems that you have received a lot of good disciples. If my old man knows, he will be very happy. He is also training people recently. Shachi's voice came suddenly. This abandoned pier number 13 was originally not far from the ripped-off tavern. Such a big commotion in the fight just now. If Shachi didn't show up, it would be a strange thing. Sister Sha, you are too high for me. Long Yu raised the corners of his mouth in a rare way, revealing a slightly drawn smile. This can't be blamed on Long Yu. Laxus's character is originally cold, combat power type. Usually there are very few occasions that can make him laugh. However, this time Shachi came out and brought Long Yu a very important piece of information. Rayleigh is helping people with special training. Teacher, you know her. Smog looked at Shachi, who suddenly appeared, and his expression became ashen. Looking at Smog with a bloody face, Long Yu patted him on the shoulder and said with a smile, "It seems that you have not suffered less from Sister Sha." Outsiders may not know Shachi's strength, but Long Yu knows it clearly. The hero of the company's naval headquarters, Garp, was chasing after the sea, but he was still standing here intact. It's enough to show Shachi's strength. That's not a cover. Not difficult to abuse Smog, who can't even be domineering in two colors. This kid, he came to my bar for a drink, but only charged him 1,000,000 Bailey, and he gave me trouble for several days, so he beat him several times. Shachi spit out a cigarette and said with a nonchalant expression. Faced with these words, many people's expressions suddenly stiffened. In particular, Zoro, who was trying to find a chance to drink, had his cheek muscles twitching. Drinking $1,000,000 at a time will not make him sell himself. He really wondered what 1,000,000 Bailey had been drinking. No wonder this admiral has been looking for a few places in succession. If it were him, he would have already taken the knife. Okay, Luffy, you continue to carry out weight-bearing training. Under the weight-bearing state, you can still exert the speed just now. Then you will complete the first stage of training. Dragon said. Ah, can the teacher let me rest for a while? I'm going to be crushed into plasticine. Luffy, it's okay to avoid training. It is the behavior of the weak. If you say no, I will urge you with a knife in the future. Luffy, my little leather shoes, are already too hungry. Looking at the three people who were full of fighting spirit all of a sudden, Dasichi, who had stopped to watch the battle, also continued to practice sword swinging. Between Luffy and Smoke just now was over in the blink of an eye. But it is precisely for this reason that they are more able to see the way to become stronger. Old teacher, I want to try these weights. Smoker glanced at it and smashed the black load-bearing equipment on the ground. Are you going to try? Then be careful. Luffy said hesitantly for a moment. Seeing this scene, Smog's expression was stagnant, but he stepped forward quickly. When he waved the gauntlets, clothes, and so on, his expression suddenly turned blue. These things add up to at least 800 kilograms. Under the heavy load all day, it can also fly a huge sea snake of more than 10 meters with one punch. Were him, it would be difficult to even walk. Are they carrying any weight on them? Smog couldn't help but looked at Zoro and others. As they nodded, their faces became more and more ugly. Originally, he had fantasized about practicing with the boat, at least being able to make the short man taller. Never thought that he would encounter a boat of monsters. Compared with them, he was his younger brother. Okay, let's rest for a while. Long Yu patted Smog on the shoulder and said, I'll leave the toilet to you. These words, Long Yu followed Shachi to the ripping bar. Brother, what do you want to drink? Shachi walked to the bar first. Sister Sha, you're welcome, is there something important for you to show up in person? Long Yu smiled and refused. As one of the few people who knew his identity, Long Yu also saved the effort of tensing his face. Hee, little brother, you are still impatient. Shachi poured a glass of rum at random, pushed it to Long Yu and said, this time, I'm looking for you to tell you that these days, some amazing people have come to this island, and when the strength of the navy is empty, planning to hold an auction. I heard that there are 2 precious devil fruits in this auction. As for the value, I have not inquired. Devil Fruit Dragon Feather raised his brows. Since he arrived in the world of One Piece, it was the first time he encountered the appearance of a devil fruit. If there is such a lively thing, Long Yu doesn't mind joining in the fun. Chapter 575, Who Wins? Hee, it seems that little brother is still a little interested in devil fruits. Shachi laughed dryly and hesitated for a moment. By the way, there is one more thing that should not have been said, but my intuition told me that this matter should be told to my little brother. My old man is helping Fire Fist Ace train, but he really wants to defeat you. He thought he might be a strong enemy, but he didn't expect that you were hiding so deeply in the battle 10 days ago. Icy Long Yu's brows couldn't help but raise, looking a little surprised. Now he is training Luffy and Rayleigh is training Ace. Is this an alternative competitor? On the other hand, when Long Yu and others landed on the Chambord Islands, the office of the Marshal of the Navy headquarters, Sengoku is standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows with a gloomy face. The hands and fingers that were wrapped around them were constantly bouncing on the arms, looking a little impatient. Warring states, don't be so irritable, it's useless to be anxious, that kid is late, but if you don't know, there will be some surprises for us. Garp sneaked a few senbei into his mouth and said with a big laugh. You bastard, you steal my things again, no wonder you are so leisurely and come here to accompany me. Warring States suddenly turned around and looked at the empty dish on the table, and it was about to explode in an instant. Bang! The closed office door was pushed open in response, interrupting the upcoming battle. Why are you here? Warring States raised his brows and said anxiously, is it related to Laxus? This guy is 7 days late. 10 days ago, the Warring States period was hysterically cheering for the Long Yu platform on the pier, and it also witnessed the birth of the bet. If Long Yu told him now that he was going to retreat, then his old face would have no place to rest, so he would just retire early. Warring States, don't worry. He-Young lifted the phone in his hand and said, that girl Ain has sent back a video. According to Zepha's retelling, this is the battle between Smog and Carp's grandson. But the video shows the time, it's only 10 seconds. I have asked Zepha and he said nothing wrong. Sengoku and Garp couldn't help being stunned during the 10 seconds of the battle. However, facing the video related to Long Yu and waiting 10 days for the video, I couldn't wait to read it. Cap, Smoker and your grandson, who do you think will win? Sengoku couldn't help talking while fiddling with the video. Who wins? Garp licked his nostrils, and then didn't say. I think it's Smog, that guy is a natural devil fruit, and Luffy can't even be domineering, so it should be difficult to win. For his grandson, Garp's imagination and fruit ability are restrained, which is clearly in front of him. Would be embarrassing if you tried to stand firm. Just not. Well, this thought just flashed in Carp's mind. That suddenly lit up, his pupils shrank suddenly. Bang, 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 several sounds of heavy objects colliding were heard in the video. Soon the screen went black. And Garp looked at each other in amazement. Is this the end? I just saw that your grandson took off a lot of clothes on his body, and then the picture changed, and Smoker flew out. Is this your grandson's victory? Sengoku couldn't help but ask. That scene just now was too fast. It was so fast that even Yin couldn't catch up with the shooting, and as soon as the scene changed, it was over. I just saw the last picture. Garp's grandson, it seems that he is still armed and domineering. Crane spoke suddenly. It made Sengoku and Garp look stagnant. Doesn't know how to be aggressive, but he can knock Smoker into the air with one punch. Crane, what do you mean? The speed of Garp's grandson burst out in an instant, and there is no chance for Smog to elementalize. Sengoku couldn't help but ask. One just now passed so fast that they couldn't react at all, so it ended directly. So if you really pay attention, the effective information you can get is not low. Yes, I am more mentally prepared than you, and I am not wrong. Crane nodded affirmatively. Kapu, I want to know, when your grandson went to sea, did you have such strength? Before the elementalization, many people can do it at the speed of knocking people into the air, but with your grandson's ability age, that's extremely rare. If he has such speed and strength now, once he is introduced into the naval headquarters, he will at least be a major general, and he will still be at the upstream level of a major general. So, your answer has great reference value. I hope you can be cautious. For a time, Sengoku also stared at Garp with a silly face. Ha ha ha, no, of course not. Garp burst out laughing. Half a month ago, let alone speed, that guy couldn't even escape the iron fist that Lao Su loves. If he hadn't escaped by taking advantage of my drunkenness, he would have been imprisoned in the Navy headquarters by me now. However, I didn't expect that in just half a month, that guy from Laxus could train Luffy to be so powerful that even Smoker was defeated by one move. Also, what is the weight-bearing material they are wearing? His steamy tricks were also learned under Laxus. No wonder he was clamoring to smash Lao Su on the phone. This is a progress. Looking at it for a moment, Garp was incoherent. Chapter 576. No need to be nervous. The expressions of Crane and Warring States couldn't help but stagnate, and they looked at each other subconsciously. They knew that Garp was a slut on weekdays. But at this juncture, there is absolutely no ambiguity. If it is true as he said, in just half a month, Laxus will develop a series of suitable training plans for Luffy. It even increased his strength several times, researched a new fruit development direction, and performed the 6-style shaving. With so many types of training, for ordinary people, it's like a cramming, and it can't keep up. The most important thing is that Laxus training works. Crane, have you seen the weight that Laxus uses? How much is it, and what materials are there? Warring States caught the phone bug in his hand. During this period of time, the Navy was slumped, but he accumulated a stomach of grievances. So I couldn't wait to find a breakthrough in Laxus. Long you can help Luffy increase his strength several times within half a month. If this scheme can be replicated, then it may not be difficult for them to train in large batches. Warring States, I know what you are thinking, but it is difficult for our Navy to replicate this plan perfectly. Zepha's voice came from outside the door. Sengoku and Crane hurriedly followed the voice, revealing a look of doubt. I know, you don't want to believe it. Walked in slowly and said, first, the load-bearing equipment used by Laxus is at least 1,000 kilograms, and it is still heavy black steel that is more valuable than Halu stone. This thing is as hard as cotton, but it is far from the ratio of ordinary steel. It is a product from the Kingdom of Giants that does not belong to the countries that are part of our world government. The quantity is very rare and there is circulation. It's really surprising that this kid can get so much. Having said that, Zepha got a cup of tea, moistened his throat, and continued, second, it is the way of training. At the moment in the Navy headquarters, Akainu and Kizaru are focusing on the development of devil fruit abilities, which has changed many new concepts. Even if I repeat the corrections many times, it will be useless. They have neglected the physical skills behind the fruit ability, and they also lack tenacity and persistence. I believe that when Garp trains his grandchildren, it is often unexpected, and it is different from our Navy's greenhouse cultivation. No matter what. Garp's grandson, or the other two teenagers, and even the girl on the boat who keeps wielding a knife is not a simple person. No wonder that boy is not willing to choose people in our Navy. It turns out that there are many good seedlings under him. As for the third point, it is the most important point. We don't have Laxus-rich coaching experience and precise training plan formulation, which means we can't imitate him and improve a person's strength in a short period of time. It can be said that his training program is difficult to perfectly replicate. The slightly long-sounding voice echoed in the office for a long time and could not be dissipated. Compared to the disappointment on Warring State's face, Karp pouted his nostrils indifferently and said with a big laugh, "Haha, I already knew that my little devil is a genius. However, that kid Laxus, the means are really good, he can come up with so many ways. It is impossible to say that the next time we meet, the grandson of this old man can become a lieutenant general, and he will be on an equal footing with me. It seems that next time we must get him a drink." Looking at Garp with a sullen face, Sengoku couldn't help but glared and said, "Kapu, you shut up and let you have time to train new recruits. You have to go, now you can't even copy the course, then what shall we do?" Seeing the duck beside his mouth and flying away, this was unacceptable to the Warring States as a marshal. "Sengoku, you don't need to be nervous. I mean, it can't be replicated perfectly, but we can simplify the training and make it work." Zephyr hesitated for a moment and said, "However, in order to open a gap in the inherent thinking of those guys, I am afraid that it can only be done after the bet. Let us prepare for this period." Zephyr is right, and it is fortunate that Laxus can think of it, but it is true that few people can accept it for a long time. Crane nodded in agreement. However, before she could continue to speak, a rush of phone bugs rang. Chapter 577, Laxus appears. What happened? Crane picked up the phone bug and said with a frown. Of the Navy headquarters and the entire Navy intelligence network. This phone bug is also an advanced phone bug responsible for contact. Lieutenant General Crane, something bad happened. Lieutenant Tautu learned that Laxus appeared in the Chambord Islands, so he went alone. Inside the phone worm, hurried voices came out. What? Crane's expression changed involuntarily, and said, when she made the report just now, wasn't she chasing the ships of the 100 Beast Pirates? The ship of the Beast Pirates has also appeared in the Chambord Islands. What? He suddenly felt his head swell, rubbed helplessly and said, okay, I will contact her and let her return to the team as soon as possible, don't cause me any trouble. Thank you, Lieutenant General. The phone bug hung up, the gazes of the three of Zephyr also swiped and landed on the Crane. Don't worry, Tautu is not a fool. It will be enough, and it will not cause trouble for Laxus to join the Navy boot camp. The Crane reluctantly replied, and hurriedly took the phone and left. Looking at that posture, it doesn't look like you're relieved at all. Islands, Long Yu has already left the Ripping Off Tavern. However, after learning about the devil fruit from Shachi's mouth, he decided to join in the fun. Along with him, there were Smoker and Aang, who had already changed into the uniforms of the Navy headquarters and accompanied him. According to what they said, they wanted to follow Long Yu as much as possible and get to know more. However, Long Yu clearly knew that these two guys had ulterior motives. Smog was planning to open a small stove, and Ai Yin wanted to know as much as possible what Long Yu had planned for Luffy's second stage of training. After all, the first stage is already an inhuman training thinking. If there is a second stage, what is it and what does it need to assist Long Yu, who is avoiding talking about it, which will undoubtedly make them feel itchy. As for Luffy and others, Long Yu showed mercy and gave them a half-day vacation. Get out of the way, don't get in the way of this uncle. You bastard, dare to block my way, I am the head of the Iron Wolf Pirates. The captain of the Iron Wolf Pirates, does 130 million exist? The closer it is to the number 1 auction house, the more and more seas gather together. After all, this was the first large-scale auction to be held after the Tianlong human skeleton demon was executed in public after a lapse of several months. It is also a means of gaining popularity. Otherwise, these auction house owners would not spend a lot of effort to find 2 animal-type devil fruits, the so-called finale treasures, and auction them. Above the sea, and the Navy headquarters has a boot camp, which is different from systematic training. To become stronger, pirates can only join a large pirate group and become an intern. On the senior's body, get physical skills, 2 color tyrants. Air and other guidance. However, the stronger the pirate group, the higher the entry barrier. If you don't have the strength yourself, if you want to join the pirate group, there is no way at all. This puts the pirates in an embarrassing dilemma. To get out of this situation, the quickest shortcut is to get the devil fruit. In the eyes of pirates, this is a good opportunity to climb to the sky. Hey, you stepped on my teacher's foot. Smoker spoke suddenly. Long Yu came to his senses after thinking. That stopped in front of them, the leader was a burly man in a purple shirt. His muscles were like a rock, and there was a heavy sword on his back, radiating a cold light. In particular, the hideous scar on his face, which was slowly twitching along with the change in expression, was even more terrifying. You white-headed brat, how dare you talk to our jackal captain like this? A pirate was the first to shout. These words fell, dozens of pirates surrounded them. In the face of this violent scene, the people who passed by all around also quickly stopped to watch the play. Senior Smoker, do we need to call for naval support? Looking at this scene, as a rookie coming out of the boot camp for the first time, I was obviously a little anxious. He took out a Navy phone bug with his backhand. Man of the Navy. Expression was stagnant, and he stared at Long Yu and the 3 of them for 3 moments. The big hand suddenly raised, and he said in a deep voice, "The business is important, let's go. Boy, don't let me touch you on the sea, or I'll have to slaughter you all." Abandoning these words, the jackal left first. Those murderous pirates also quickly followed. It can be said that in the first half of the Great Waterway, if you can offer a reward of over 100 million, it can be called a big pirate-like existence. Of course, it can be successfully passed through the Chambord archipelago as a springboard to reach the New World. That is another world. It can be said that the Chambord Islands are the tomb of the pirates eliminated. You bastard, during this time, if it wasn't for the pursuit of the Ward pirates and the fight against the skeleton demon, resulting in the lack of troops in the headquarters, these pirates would never have the chance to be so arrogant. Smog's face sank, and he said angrily, "Teacher, if you think it's necessary, I can contact the Navy." Right now, Lax's training method, and Luffy's powerful strength, greatly magnified Smoker's sense of belonging. That one teacher was a teacher, but it was so loud. If anyone dares to shoot Long Yu, Smog will definitely be the first to shoot. After all, at Long Yu's hands, he suffered all the hardships and humiliation, and even the toilet was covered. Chapter 578, offering a reward of 210 million. If he didn't learn anything practical, Long Yu would be harmed by others. This is something Smog absolutely doesn't want to see. Hee, no need, you have to learn your own business and solve it yourself. Long Yu laughed dryly, looked at the figures who had penetrated into the auction house, and said, "You know how much the jackal pirates are offering." Smog's expression couldn't help but stagnate for how many bounties were offered. He had just returned from East China Sea Rog Town, a backcountry like this, and he really didn't know how much the reward was offered. After all, before that, Smoker's main focus was on the East China Sea. Where the reward of several million is not bad, the reward of tens of millions, I am afraid that 10 fingers can count it. Old teacher, our recruits have a course, which is to know ourselves and our enemies, and we will not be imperiled in 100 battles, so I have been familiar with the information about the pirate group that has occurred frequently within a year. Ain hurriedly said. In this Jackal Pirates, the captain has offered a reward of 130 million, and the other pirate crew members who showed up have a total of 80 million, and the total reward is 210 million too. Having said this, Yin clenched the phone bug tightly and said, "If you want to know more details, teacher, I can contact Teacher Zepha." A reward of 210 million 2 inches. Long Yu raised his brows involuntarily. "Teacher, why are you asking this?" Smoker couldn't help but ask. Hee, nothing, just remembered a question. Long Yu rubbed Yin's head and said, you girl, don't always take out the phone bug in the future. Learn on the ship under my command, you don't need the Navy to support it. If you have anything, I can carry it for you. Having said that, Long Yu glanced at the auction house, which was already very lively. It's almost time, let's go. Looking at Long Yu, who was the first to walk to the auction, Yin's cheeks flushed slightly, and she couldn't help shrinking her neck. Zepha's serious face flashed in his mind. Long time, in Yin's memory, the teachers who were teachers were all unsmiling, and they didn't like them to cause trouble. I never thought that Laxus, who was a teacher, would rub her head so casually for the second time. He also said such arrogant words. The most important thing, Long Yu used the template of Laxus, and the age difference is not big. Why don't you go? The smoker sounded suddenly. Aren't you shy? No, I didn't. Woke up suddenly and quickly followed. Dear guest, welcome to the number 2 auction house. 2 guards at the door. Guard, after taking a look at Long Yu's appearance, he put away the reward in his hand. However, the sharp-eyed Long Yu could still see clearly that the reward order was the template of the great skeleton demon, and the appearance of his body. It seems that the number 1 auction house was destroyed. For these merchants, I am afraid they are scared. Especially, after such a riot, for a long time. Before the great skeleton demon was captured, it would be very difficult for the Tianlong people, who are the big gold lords, to land on the Chambord Islands again. Is it all right? Long Yu glanced at the auction items on the stage and asked. All right, 3 distinguished guests. Guard quickly replied, however, this time the venue is small, and many people came to participate in the auction, so there are no seats, and the 3 guests can only stand aside to bid. This is the auction item list. Stand aside. Smoker's brows furrowed. In Rog Town, he is the accustomed master. When has he been treated like this? No problem. Long Yu replied and walked straight into the auction house. Seeing this scene, Smog and Ain couldn't help but startled. But still quickly followed. Teacher, why don't you fight for it? Smoker, sipping his cigar, couldn't help saying. In his eyes, this move was a bit too suffocating. Struggle. Long Yu smiled dryly and said, this kind of auction house will end soon. As for the fight, let's wait for a while. After a while looking at the mysterious dragon feather, Smaller suddenly lost his head. What's more, he is not a person who is good at using his brain. Shark Man, this. Captain Ol bid 13 million, the first time. 13 million for the second time, 13 million for the third time, deal. Congratulations to Captain Ol for obtaining a powerful Murloc slave. With this Murloc slave to navigate, he will be able to pass through the Murloc Island and reach the New World without incident, becoming another overlord of the New World. High platform, the old man in charge of the auction rang the wooden hammer for the last time, and immediately, excitedly called out. Soon, I saw a few people, escorted the Murlocs down, and handed over to the captain of the pirate group who spent 13 million. 13 million by a Murloc. Ain couldn't help swallowing a mouthful of saliva. For a new recruit like her, each of them only leads the poor 10,000 Baileys, and it is more than 100,000 in a year. It is simply incomparable to this opening and closing more than 10 million. Chapter 579, 35 million. Yin, as long as you graduate and go to sea in the future, you will know that the concept of Bailey is just a number in the sea. Long Yu said lightly. When Yin heard this, she couldn't help but startled. She couldn't react to this sentence for a while. However, what was auctioned next soon attracted Ain's attention again. Legged clan, the long-handed clan, the dwarves, etc. For Ain, who left the recruit camp for the first time, it was an eye-opener. With more than a dozen slaves being auctioned off, the end seems to be coming to an end. Smog frowned and said, Teacher, this auction is coming to an end, don't you have what you want? is very eager to know about the second stage of training set by Long Yu. This is also the purpose of his following. Wait. Long Yu replied, looking at some broken stone products brought up on the high platform. His brows couldn't help raising his eyebrows. Everyone, the next thing, but some big pirates who don't have the ability of devil fruit, after going to the new world, the necessary weapon to kill the enemy. On the high platform opened his throat and shouted after watching the truck carrying the goods stopped. You can imagine that there are countless monsters in the new world. In case you encounter some powerful devil fruit abilities, and you can't fight against them, you just have the sharp weapon of Halo Stone in your hand, and you can stab him by surprise. Now, isn't the scale of victory yours? These words fell, there was a trace of silence in the arena, and the eyes of many people lit up the next moment. In the first half of the Great Waterway, being able to come into contact with two color-domineering pirates is simply a drop in the bucket. But in the new world in the second half of the Great Waterway, it is full of seas. There are a lot of people who are still devil fruit people. Moreover, new pirates entering the new world often become the hunting targets of older pirates. If you can bring a piece of Halo Stone, it will undoubtedly increase your ability to protect yourself. Of course, it is still unknown whether it will really come in handy. Well, it looks like everyone realizes the usefulness of these things. Who presided over the auction saw the interest of many people being aroused, and hurriedly struck while the iron was hot and said, "Then let's start the auction now." Most of the Halo stones here are leftovers, and there are also some finished handcuffs and weapon decorations. The specifications are a bit different, but because of the rarity, the starting price is not low. Come down and bid at least 1 million each time. 5 million Ain were stunned in place. In the Navy, she is also rarely seen. Halo Stone products. Never thought that the value on the outside would be so high. Seeing the value rising to tens of millions all of a sudden, I was stunned. However, before Ain could react, an unexpected voice sounded. 20 million Baileys. 20 million Baileys. There was a sound of gasping for air in the arena. All eyes, including Ai Yin, fell on Long Yu. Looking at Long Yu, who raised the price to 10 million as soon as he opened his mouth. In their eyes, this is simply insane. It's the Navy I met at the door just now. In the last row raised his brows, and immediately revealed a playful smile. Seeing this scene, the tens of servants' eyes lit up and they knew exactly what their boss had in mind. After all, they didn't do much of this kind of thing. 20 million Baileys. This lord gave 20 million Baileys, is there any more than this? The old man's cloudy eyes suddenly lit up. In his eyes, Long Yu is a fool with money. After all, in the eyes of the old man, it is not bad that this pile of sea tower stones can be sold for 13 to 4 million. Long Yu raised the price so high as soon as he opened his mouth, and if there are some who don't know how to do it, maybe he will increase the price. At that time, he will be able to sit back and reap the profits. Haha, isn't this Halo Stone? I just want to order it and bring it to my family as a gift. Together with the big laughter of the jackal, it instantly attracted the attention of many people. In their eyes, they also eagerly want to see if there is someone who is taking advantage of it and will raise the price a bit. I bid 25 million Baileys. 25 million Baileys. The old man's eyes widened, and he said excitedly, 25 million Bailey, do you still want this lord? These words fell, everyone's eyes were locked on Long Yu's body. Ai Yin's pretty face froze slightly, and she said anxiously, Teacher, if you need Halo Stone, why don't I mention it to Teacher Zephyr, maybe it will work. Right now, the name of Laxus, in the eyes of Zephyr and other high-level officials, is a sweet and delicious existence. If Long Yu really wanted to ask for the point Halo Stone, Zephyr would never refuse. No need, someone pays for us anyway. Long Yu smiled warmly and raised his hand again, 35 million Baileys. Wow! Chapter 580, Domineering. An uproar in the huge auction hall. You with disbelief. I opened my mouth to increase the price by 10 million Bailey. I still shot a bunch of defective Halu stones. If it spreads out, it is simply a typical person who is stupid and has a lot of money. Facing the changes in everyone's expressions, Long Yu smiled and looked at the jackal, and said, I remember you seem to be called the jackal. What's the matter? Didn't you like this pile of things? Why didn't you make an offer? Is there no Bailey? Even Ain and Smoke were surprised by the provocative words that suddenly appeared. The moment before, in front of the gate, Long Yu's retreat was still vivid in their minds. Now it suddenly becomes stronger, and people have a kind of feeling, unacceptable. You. The jackal suddenly became angry. He originally held the idea of raising the price and making Long Yu white, high price. As soon as Long Yu opened his mouth, the price increased by 10 million. He even faced and challenged him. In case he made a bid, it was convenient to stop bidding. For him, it was put together. After all, he clearly knows who is the boss behind this auction house. Captain, let's stop calling. It's a fool to ask for this pile of junk for 35 million. A thin man said anxiously. And, I see that kid, there's definitely not that many Baileys. Jackal's eyes lit up, which made him think of a way to step down, and he snorted coldly. Boy, you are provoking the great jackal pirates. I am offering a reward of 130 million existence. Forgot to tell you, as one of the 4 emperors, Lord Kaido of the Beast Pirates, has decided to recruit me as his pirate group, so I don't care about the mere tens of millions of Baileys. However, I suspect that you don't have 35 million Baileys on you at all, and you are making random bids here, so I hope you take out something of sufficient value to prove that you have this ability. I believe this request is not excessive. A stern voice. No one dislikes this kind of lively thing in the huge auction hall. What's more, 35 million photographed a pile of broken stones, which is indeed a bit unacceptable to other people. The old man standing on the high platform tensed. The face of Jackal's request, if it is normal, in order not to offend the guests, he will play a rounder. But as soon as the other party opened his mouth, he put out the title of the 100 Beast Pirates. This is for him. But it cannot be ignored. What's more, the people around are still watching the excitement, and the next finale products need to continue. So, he has only one choice. My lord, I am really sorry, my bank has a rule. If there is a bidder, when there is a dispute about the qualifications of another bidder, you need to submit enough auction qualifications. I hope this lord will come up with 315 million Baileys, or a treasure of equal value. The old man couldn't help but say. Bastard, then why doesn't he need it? Smoker's face darkened, and he shouted in a hurry. If it was normal, he would definitely lift the tabletop. Most importantly, Smog doesn't think that Long Yu has so many Baileys on him. After all, that shabby sloop, and the expensive heavy-duty steel, I am afraid that the wealth has already been consumed. HMPH, the head of our family, the head of the item, is already worth 130 million Bailey. Is it possible that there is still a shortage of that little money? The skinny pirate beside the jackal was the first to shout. In the face of this value, many people have acquiesced, even the old people on the stage are no exception. After all, the world is a big deal. As long as the fist is big, Bailey is everywhere. Teacher me. Ain opened his mouth after hesitating to speak. However, she soon saw a large warm hand pressing on her head. What's the matter, are you going to borrow it from your teacher again? Long Yu smiled warmly. On this unsmiling cheek, this smile makes people feel a kind of inexplicable feeling. Boy, what are you laughing at, why didn't you take Bailey out? The jackal's expression changed slightly, and he began to shout a little impatiently. For a time, the atmosphere of the huge auction house suddenly became depressed, and everyone's eyes fell on Long Yu. Sorry, I've never had the habit of carrying money. The smile on Long Yu's face became more and more serious, his eyes turned in vain and landed on Jackal. However, thank you for reminding me of one thing. It turns out that you are a mobile cash machine with 130 million Bailey's heads, and I laughed it off. The small voices fell, and the scene suddenly fell to the ground. Even Ain's pupils shrank suddenly. She never thought that Long Yu would say such domineering words.